What I'll do is we'll read the Sanskrit, the translation, the purport, and then we can go from there. Okay, so this is actually the end of chapter 13 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'll just read the verse and then go from here. Ityuktva ta ruhat swagam narada sahatum buraha yudhistiro vachastasya ridi kritva jaha. Okay. Iti thus uktva, having addressed Arta, thereafter, Aruhat, ascended Swagam into outer space. Naradaha, the great sage Narada, Saha, along with Tumburuhu, his stringed instrument, Yudhistiraha, Maharaj Yudhisthira, Vachaha, instructions, Tasya, of his, Hridi Kritva, keeping in the heart, Ajahat, gave up, Suchaha, all lamentations. Okay. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Having spoken thus, the great sage Narada, along with his Veena, ascended into outer space. Yudhisthira kept his instruction in his heart, and so was able to get rid of all lamentations. Okay, so the purport. Sri Narada Ji is an eternal spaceman, having been endowed with a spiritual body by the grace of the Lord. He can travel in the outer spaces of both the material and spiritual worlds without restriction, and can approach any planet in unlimited space within no time. We have already discussed his previous life as the son of a maidservant. Because of his association with pure devotees, he was elevated to the position of an eternal spaceman and thus had freedom of movement. One should therefore try to follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni and not make a futile effort to reach other planets by mechanical means. Maharaj Yudhisthira was a pious king, and therefore he could see Narada Muni occasionally. Anyone who desires to see Narada Muni must first be pious and follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni. Okay, so I'll read the verse again. Having spoken thus, the great sage Narada, along with his Veena, ascended into outer space. Yudhisthira kept his instruction in his heart, and so was able to get rid of all lamentations. So it's good to begin by giving you some context of what's going on here. I'll just say prayers quickly, then we'll do that. Onagyanatamarandasya gyananjana shalakaya. Chakshu militamina tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale. Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakkamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidam Tom Sajivam. Sadvaitam Savadutam Harjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lavita Shri Vishikambitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari. Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchikapatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha. Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, first of all, I just want to say it's a real pleasure to be able to do some service for all of you. And we beg your blessings so we can speak something on this very wonderful, as is all parts of the Bhagavatam, this very wonderful area of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the end of the 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this chapter is entitled Dhritarashtra Quits Home. So what actually has happened in this chapter is that Vidura has returned to the palace. So he was on pilgrimage and he's now returned to the palace, and he's greeted very affectionately by the other members of the palace, Yudhisthira, etc. And Vidura then speaks to Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra was the blind king who was the father of the 100 Kauravas, headed by Duryodhana. And they had tried to destroy the Pandavas. And it ultimately culminated in the Battle of Kurukshetra, in which the Kauravas were destroyed. So Yudhisthira is greeting Vidura when he's come back from this pilgrimage, and Vidura is very kind. He speaks to Dhritarashtra, and he says something very, very powerful. And this is so instructive for us. What does Vidura tell Dhritarashtra? He explains to him, basically, just like all of us, he tells him that you're dying. He points out to him that your body is growing old. Because Dhritarashtra was born blind, but he also says to him, you're even losing your ability to hear. And he basically tells him what you need to do, because you are at the end of your life, you need to prepare yourself to go back home, back to Godhead. That's basically what he's telling him. In this chapter, in text number 25, Vidura will tell Dhritarashtra, despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. You see? It's really, really powerful. It is really, really powerful. He really goes on to explain that he should leave and he should prepare himself to return back home, back to Godhead. That's the instruction that's given by Vidura, the compassionate instruction that's given by Vidura to Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra does leave. He leaves and he's accompanied by his wife Gandhari to prepare themselves to go back home, back to Godhead. Now, what happens then is that Narada Muni comes, and the Yudhisthira notices that Dhritarashtra isn't there, and neither is Gandhari, and he wonders what's happened. So then Narada Muni comes, and Narada Muni explains that Dhritarashtra is left in order to prepare himself to go back to Godhead. You know, this is really interesting. And actually, just one detail there, Vidura has gone with him. Yeah, they've actually gone together. So this is explained by Narada Muni, and he explains that Dhritarashtra is actually engaging in yoga in order to free himself of his material attachments and to actually prepare his mind to return back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is where we are coming to at the end of this particular set of verses. So Narada Muni has explained to Yudhisthira what's happened, and then he leaves. So let's explore this. The first thing to point out is that someone who's very intelligent prepares for that which is inevitable. Okay, this is the first thing. It's so amazing. It's so amazing how powerful Maya is. Why do I say that? It's because every single day we see that people grow old and they die. but we're so fearful, and we so much are in ignorance. We don't want to look at that. We don't want to recognize that what we're being shown is exactly what's going to happen to us. And the sign that we don't want to see it is that we don't prepare for the inevitable. It's absolutely incredible. Something is inevitable, you know it's going to come, but because of fear, because of ignorance, we want to close our eyes and hope that I just want to close my eyes, and I want to hope that if I close my eyes, then that's not gonna apply to me. It's absolutely amazing how that works. Absolutely amazing. And then when it rocks up upon us, then we become completely fearful and completely scared and completely stunned and completely in despair. But you know, the amazing thing, it was always coming in our direction. That's the path of material life. That's the path of material consciousness. What the Bhagavatam is doing, and it's doing this by an indirect method, is that the Bhagavatam is actually giving us a hint through these pastimes, like it's tapping us on the shoulder like a loving friend and saying, dude, look, everyone else is growing old and they have to ultimately prepare to go back home, back to Godhead. You know, that's the whole purpose of their life. Everyone, like right now, when I'm giving this class, I look outside my window, and outside of my window, I can see into this playground. And in this playground, there are loads of young children. They're probably not even 10 years old. The young children in this playground that I can see, all of them, there'll be, let's see, maybe a good 50 young children, because this window that I'm looking out of, it looks over a school playground. And I remember being that young person in the school playground. And I'm sure many of us on the call, we remember being that young person in the school playground. So it's so incredible that we know that our body over time goes through what? In this series of verses in this particular chapter, I read you verse 25, and it talks about the dwindling. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live, even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. Isn't that incredible? Our body is going to deteriorate like an old garland. In fact, every day our body deteriorates like an old garland. Now, two things about that. Number one is we grow older in this age than other people did in previous ages. This is the first strike of the material energy. When people live a material life, when we're too immersed in material energy, what happens is what? It affects the mind, which affects the body. Matraspasta stukuntaya, shitoshna sukha dukada. Because someone who's attached to the material energy, I was discussing this with one devotee the other day, the more we are attached to the material energy, the more we become attached to the roller coaster of happiness and distress. When you see a roller coaster, what do you see? You see someone, they go on the roller coaster in the beginning, you know, when you first get in the roller coaster, it first goes up. You see, it goes up, and often it goes up slowly. So you think, wow, it's going up. Things are improving, things are ascending. But it gets to a certain point, just like the body does. It gets to a certain point, and then it starts to go down. And how does the roller coaster go down? It doesn't immediately go down at fast speed. First, it goes down a little bit slowly, just a little bit slowly, slightly moving, slight downward. But then after time, the speed of the downward spiral, it gets faster, faster, faster. Then suddenly, it's very, very fast. When we are attached to the material world and to the things of the material world, our mind becomes affected in the same way that the material world is moving. So the material world has this tendency to decay, right? Just like if you leave some food out, we've all seen it. You leave some food out, even if you put it in the fridge, after a while, what happens to the food? It starts to go bad. What does when you put the food in the fridge, it doesn't go bad as fast. Okay? That fridge is the mode of goodness, right? That fridge, you could also say, is spiritual life. When we are fully spiritual, or the more we're spiritual, the less the body grows old, the slower it ages. Why? Because I'm not as attached to the material energy, therefore I'm not as affected by the material energy, therefore I'm not as stressed by the material energy. This Bhagavatam, it gives us an indirect hint through the pastimes. What we're hearing here is exactly what's going to happen to all of us. The body is going to grow old. The body dies, the body dwindles. So what can we do about it? We can't stop the body growing old. But if we're spiritual, it doesn't age so fast, because rather than being under the material and rather than being under the material energy, if we really make a sincere attempt to be Krishna conscious, then even though we're in the material world, we'll be under the spiritual energy. This is one of the most powerful opportunities of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada, he would often walk faster than his own disciples, and they're in their 20s. Prabhupada, he's in his 70s. How is that possible? It's because he's under the spiritual energy. Prabhupada's disciples, they would sleep a good 6-7 hours a day. Prabhupada is older than them by about 50 years. He sleeps 2 hours a day. How is that possible? It's possible because he's under the spiritual energy. So we're being given the hint here. This is something that's coming. When Prabhupada was preparing to leave the world, when the bodies realized his body has grown it has aged to a certain degree, he's going to pass on, he's going to go back home, back to Godhead. He said something which was incredibly instructive to his disciples. He looked at them and he said to them, do not think that this will not happen to you. What I put towards you, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have an incredible opportunity to develop the mentality of the Bhagavatam. What do I mean by that? The mentality of the Bhagavatam, and this is a way of looking at the world. The mentality of the Bhagavatam is the mentality of fearlessness and confidence. What does that do? The fearlessness and the confidence of the Bhagavatam allows us to grow up. Just like a child doesn't want to see certain things because they're immature. They want to, I don't want to see that, they don't want to recognize certain realities due to immaturity. They just want to, I just want to enjoy, I just want to play. But a grown adult doesn't act that way. What does a grown adult do? A grown adult, we fearlessly want to see exactly what is the situation that I'm dealing with. Because if I'm really honest, and that's what it means to be honest in the deep sense. Honesty means to see the whole picture honestly, to look at the reality honestly. And then when I look at the reality honestly, what's a special gift? What's the special gift that you and I get every time we look at the Bhagavatam, every time we read the Bhagavatam, every time we reflect on the Bhagavatam, every time we discuss the Bhagavatam? The gift that we get is that we have our eyes open. We have our eyes open to the truth. And we can handle the truth once we see the truth, once we recognize the truth. Okay. For example, sometimes we go through some situation and we're around certain people and, we saw some signs that maybe they weren't trustworthy. Maybe they were, they were a bit manipulative. We saw some signs, but we just didn't want to accept it. We thought, no. I don't want to believe that. I just want to believe that they're wonderful and that they're perfect and, whatever. And we close our eyes. And then later on, they do something that's really manipulative or exploitative to us. And we're like, But it's so amazing because they talk about this sometimes in relationships. They call them red flags. And then when we get hurt by them, then we look back at our relationship with that person and we think to ourselves, hold on. No, I remember back, like last year, they made that little side comment about someone. I thought that was a bit off. And then I noticed that sometimes they were speaking, but they would be a bit crafty, or they were saying something that they wouldn't do that themselves. They would pretend to be something that they weren't. So when we look back, we see there were all these, they call them red flags, these small warnings that this person is not what they're pretending themselves to be. Look, there's a red flag. Oh, there's another red flag. Oh, there's another red flag. And so when something happens where we get hurt, when we look back, we realize we were being shown, they were showing us all along what they truly were, but we just closed our eyes. We didn't want to see the truth. So the Bhagavatam says the root cause of all suffering is ignorance. So what's being shown to us in this stage of the Bhagavatam, through the pastime, through Vidura's instruction to Dhritarashtra, is that all of us, the body will grow old. The body will experience what? Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Dosha, and Darshanam. We're going to experience birth, old age, disease, death, everybody. Everybody and anybody will lose the body. So, again, this vision of the Bhagavatam, this mentality of the Bhagavatam is first of all to be confident, strong, mature enough to see the reality. And now that I see the reality, okay, what's the reality? The reality is that the material world is like a hotel. The material world is like a hotel. You can stay for some time, but eventually we're gonna have to leave, baby. Okay? We can stay for some time, but eventually we're gonna have to leave the hotel. So if I know I'm gonna have to leave the hotel, if I know I'm gonna have to go back to where I came from, if I know it's inevitable, then what will I do? An intelligent person, if they know something is inevitable, they will prepare for it to make sure that the inevitable happens in the best possible way. So what does that mean for us practically? It means that spiritual life is the preparation for the best old age, and it's the best preparation for death. In fact, it's the best preparation for everything. I was having a very interesting conversation with my wife the other day, and we were talking about causes of anxiety. What causes anxiety? And we were discussing how anxiety is caused by being too attached to the material world. Anxiety is caused when I think, you know what? If I can just control the material world and arrange it a certain way, then I'll be happy. You see, that sounds very pious. That sounds very neutral and very nice, right? Yeah, let me just control the material world in a certain way and then I'll be happy. But that belief has its dark side, okay? Just like a person has its shadow, every belief has its negative belief attached to it. So if I believe that my happiness depends on me being able to control the material world and to make things happen in a certain way in the material world, if I believe that, if that's my material belief, then what's the shadow? If I believe that I need to control the world and make it a certain way to be happy, the shadow of that belief is that if the world doesn't arrange itself in a certain way, then I must become unhappy. That's the shadow side of it. That's the shadow belief. So a belief that happiness comes by controlling and arranging the material world in a certain way, it will cause, it's actually the cause of the belief that unless the material world and unless the external world goes a certain way, I'm going to be unhappy, I'm going to suffer. The two things are connected. We can't have one belief without having its shadow side that comes along with it. Just like when you have when you see someone's body and the sun's out, as long as that person's outside and in the sun, the person has their body, but there's also the shadow. And you can't separate their shadow from the body, just like you can't shadow the material belief that my happiness is based upon arranging the material world in a certain way. You can't separate that belief from the belief that unless things happen a certain way materially, I'm going to be unhappy and I'm going to suffer. It's one package. So this Bhagavatam is blessing us with the mentality of the Bhagavatam. It's blessing us with the long-term perception of the Bhagavatam. And it's saying, dude, wake up. Look, everyone gets old, everyone gets diseased, everyone dies. That means it must happen to us, not just to us. Not just to us. It means it's going to happen to us. It means it happens also to everyone around us. I believe it was Burijan Prabhu, who's one Prabhupada disciple. He said this decade will be the decade of tears. What did he mean by that? He meant that this next 10 years, and he said this a few years ago, so not even 10 years left. He said this will be the time when all the Prabhupada disciples leave the planet. Because they're at that age now, right? They're approaching 70s, 80s, etc. They're at that age, so they're going to leave. You see? So it's inevitable. Of course, some leave even earlier. But the point is that these are the things which are inevitable. So what the Bhagavatam is saying, because you know this is going to happen, I'm giving you a heads up so that you can prepare for it. Prabhupada once said that the sign of a philosopher is someone who lives with the understanding of death. That's not, that sounds sometimes negative. Oh, death. No, not necessarily. In fact, if we think about this carefully, death can be the final exam and death can be the ultimate success. What do I mean by that? What is it about going back to Godhead? Why does the scripture, why does our teachings talk about going back to Godhead? Think about it. What you're stepping into, when you go back home, back to Godhead, you're going to a spiritual world where you are eternally youthful. You're going to a spiritual world where you never suffer any disease. You're going to a spiritual world where you look beautiful and you're around Krishna and his associates and they are all beautiful. And you just have an amazing, loving time. And you're in deep bliss, deep ecstasy all the time. That's our natural state of spiritual existence. That's what we're meant to be going back to. That's our birthright. But it's also what we have to prepare for. So we know that our time is limited. Again, when we recognize that, it doesn't become an issue. Why? Because if I know that my time is limited, it's actually a code. To say that my time is limited actually means that my time is valuable and incredibly precious. Think about it. When someone says that their time is limited, it means that their time is precious. We can use the temporary time in the material world to exist in a place with eternal ecstasy. We can trade the temporary and material for the eternal and the ecstatic. Right? We can do that trade-in, right? That exchange. The eternal and the temporary for the eternal and the ecstatic. And how do we do that? The clue is being given here. First of all, the first clue is that Yudhisthira, he took the trouble to give amazing advice, even to Dhritarashtra, who made so many negative things. In the verses, I was reading through these verses before this class to understand the context. And in the verses in this chapter, it's incredible. I'll give you an example, right? One of the things that's mentioned, I'll give you the exact reference because it was just so, when I read that, I thought, wow, that even it's just so real. So text 8 of this chapter, Marjorie this said, my uncle, do you remember how you always protected us along with our mother from all sorts of calamities? Your partiality, like the wings of a bird, saved us from poisoning and arson. What are they talking about? The Pandavas, there was an attempt to kill them by arson. So Duryodhan, he had arranged to actually have them stay in the house of lac. And then he was actually arranging that house would be set on fire and they would all be burned to death. I mean, just take a moment to think about it. It's not even to spite them or to, to criticize them, to actually kill them by burning them to death. Burning them to death. And Vidura had helped to warn them that they shouldn't stay in that house. He'd actually indirectly given them a clue as to what was going to happen, and so they avoided being roasted to death. So they're speaking very honestly about that to Vidura. Vidura, and those attempts at the life of the Pandavas by Duryodhan and the Kauravas, it was done under the full blessings of this same Dhritarashtra, even though he was so negative and so hateful towards the Pandavas, and even didn't listen to Vidura on several occasions. Vidura has still come back very compassionately to give him good advice. That's compassion. That's love. Someone who's tried to not only ignore you, completely, just completely marginalize you, but has tried to kill those that you love. And you're still so compassionate that you're able to give them good advice. That's compassion. That's deep compassion. Vidura has come back and given such great advice to Dhritarashtra, who's come to his senses and has taken that advice. Vidura has given him advice and he's gone with him. As he goes with his wife, so Dhritarashtra goes with his wife to prepare himself to make that journey, knowing that he's got to return back home, back to Godhead. You see? So it's an incredible expression of mercy. So the clue is given here that we, just like Dhritarashtra has taken good advice from such a great personality as Vidura, we should also take Vidura's advice as he's giving it in the pages of the Bhagavatam. We are like people who are eavesdropping in on a very exalted conversation and pastime in order to learn from that same pastime the same message. So we can hear from Vidura, hear his good advice, and we can think, okay, my time is precious. Therefore, what should I do? If my time is precious, it means my time is valuable. Therefore, how do I mold my life? How do I mold my time? Because life is time. Right? How do I mold my life? Meaning, how do I mold my time to make sure that every second counts and that every day I'm able to make the most, the best investment. So I can invest the temporary and the material for the eternal and the ecstatic. That's actually the greatest sign of self-compassion and self-love. Right? This is how lucky every devotee is. And the beauty of this Krishna consciousness is that even you don't have to necessarily change everything that you do. For example, just like someone who's not a devotee eats food, you eat food, but you can offer your food with love and devotion, and it's going to help you to make spiritual advancement. Just as someone who's not a devotee has friends and family that they converse with, you also can have association that you converse with. But just like they're talking about Gramya Katha, materialistic discussions, we can talk about Krishna Katha. Machita matkata prana bodhayanta parasparam kapayantischa mamnityam tusyanticha ramanticha. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he'll tell Arjuna, he says, my devotees are experiencing what? Great bliss, great satisfaction from doing what? From enlivening one another about me. What we're, ladies and gentlemen, and this is also very thrilling to me too, we're being reminded about how to make the most intelligent investment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're being reminded that life is short. No problem. No problem. That means life is valuable. We're being reminded that every day you're investing your money. You're investing the currency of your life, the currency of your time. And let's be honest, sometimes we invest it materially, which means it gets lost. When you invest material time in material activities, you lose everything. What is it that Prabhupada says? Prabhupada says that if you give up the eternal for the temporary, both are lost. Now, let's start there. Let's explain that. If I give up the eternal, right? So if I give up Krishna, if I give up Krishna consciousness, if I give up spiritual life, just to do materialistic things, then the scripture says you lose both. Why? Because I've given up the eternal and I've used my time for things which are temporary, which are going to leave me anyway. So I lose both. But the saying goes, if I give up the temporary for the eternal, there's no loss. Why is there no loss? Because the temporary was going to leave me anyway. Okay? The temporary, because it's temporary by nature, it was going to go anyway. So if I've given up something that was already going to leave me in order to hold on to or to achieve something that's going to last forever, there's no loss. I let go of something that was already going to leave me for something that will always stay. Wow. Wow. That's the choice that you and I make every day. You know, that's the choice that you and I make every single day. So every day that we chant sincerely, hear the Bhagavatam, offer our food to Krishna, serve the deities, engage in service, and that we do it with the right mood. Anya bilasata shunyam, jnana karman anavritam, anukulena krishnanu, shilanam bhakti uttama. Every time we do an activity, right, for the pleasure of Krishna, without any selfish desire for material fruitive activity or gyan. Anytime I do an activity for Krishna's pleasure, right? Anytime I do that, what am I doing? I'm exchanging the temporary for the eternal, right? But I'm exchanging the miserable for the ecstatic. And our life is all about gaining as many spiritual credits as we possibly can. The more that we gain those spiritual credits, the more that we experience the spiritual world and the spiritual bliss and the spiritual ecstasy and the spiritual fearlessness and the spiritual wisdom, the more that we experience it in our hearts and minds, even while we are still in this material world. We can be in spiritual consciousness even while our physical bodies are in the material world. So Krishna consciousness is what? Krishna consciousness is the lifestyles of the spiritually rich and famous. Vidura, Yudhishthira, Pandavas, the spiritually rich and famous. So we should do this. We should remember we have a great opportunity, but we should also remember we have limited time on this planet, but we can exchange the limited for the unlimited. This is a special gift that we're all being given, and it's a gift that's staring us in our face. But you know what the amazing thing is? Sometimes when something is always around, when an opportunity is always there, it's easy to miss it, isn't it? What is the saying? They say that familiarity breeds contempt. So sometimes when something's always there, it's like, yeah, I'll get, I'll get to it. Yeah, don't worry, it's always there. It's always there. It's always there until the day that that our lives have, it's there until the day that our life goes just like the life of Yudhisthira at this space in the Bhagavatam. It's there until we turn around one day and then just like the hourglass, you have these hourglasses with all the sand, they call it the sand timers. When we were young, you used to have these sand timers. You turn it upside down and you see all the sand runs through this glass, and then it just runs through, then it fills one side. Just until the day that last grain of sand, that last second of our life in this world disappears. Someone who's really intelligent, I'm going to really emphasize this, someone who's really intelligent prepares for the inevitable. I'm telling you, this is what Krishna's showing us. He's saying, dude, I've got a big deal for you. Look, most people, you look out into the world, you look out into the people that you know, you'll see most people, they just don't see what's obvious. Every day, people are growing old, they're getting diseased, they're dying. And everyone's just like, I just want to close my eyes. I just want to pretend it's not happening. I just want to pretend it's not going to happen to me. And the Bhagavatam, Yudhisthira, Vidura, they're helping us to understand, dude, that's the wrong approach. The clever thing to do, the intelligent thing to do is to understand, no, look, that's obviously going to happen to me, but what that means, there's an opportunity for me to become Krishna conscious now, so that when that happens to me, it's no problem. When the body grows old, the body becomes diseased, the body goes to death. If I'm in spiritual consciousness, it's no problem. In fact, if I get into spiritual consciousness, then when that's coming, when that day happens, I'm going to be even more excited, because I'll be already absorbed in Krishna consciousness by that time, at that time. And therefore I know, wow, I'm going to lose my body. And therefore I'm going to step back into the spiritual world, where I'm always going to be in ecstasy. I'm going to have a young body. I'm going to have a particular relationship with Krishna. I'm going to be part of the spiritual world and the family of all the devotees in the spiritual world. I'm never going to have to suffer again. Everything's going to be ecstatic and joyful and blissful and loving. And I'm going to enjoy all my services to Krishna, and he's going to lovingly reciprocate with my service. Wow, isn't that incredible? Krishna consciousness means to buy your ticket back to the spiritual world. So let's commit ourselves to exchange the material and the temporary for the eternal and the ecstatic. Let's do what Vidura is advising Dhritarashtra to do in this section of the Bhagavatam. Let's get ourselves ready, and let's remember that every day, every second counts, right? Every day, let's try to chant properly with focus, knowing that I'm building my credits, I'm building my spiritual consciousness, I'm building my spiritual body by the quality and by the quantity of my devotional service, and by the sincerity of my devotional service. Let's associate as if our life depends on it. Let's associate with our great leaders, our great spiritual teachers, our gurus, knowing that there's no time to waste. I need that association now, because by doing so, I'm developing my spiritual consciousness, and I'm preparing myself for the inevitable time when I leave my body, and if I do this properly now, if I take it seriously now, two things will happen. First of all, I'll have the best experience I can have in the material world, because when I'm spiritual, my body doesn't age so much because I'm not so stressed. I'm detached, right? When I'm spiritual, actually, I carry my joy inside of me. So I'm not so anxious, because I don't just think I've got to control the material world. I've got to make everything material happen in a certain way. I know that actually, and this is a secret, this is what I was discussing with my wife the other day. The greatest trick that the Maya pulled on everyone is she made us all think that happiness is coming from trying to arrange the material situation in a certain way. But we all know people who may be better than us at arranging the material world in a certain way, and they're still unhappy. That's the first point. And second, we all know people who, no matter how rich, famous, and powerful they are, they're not able to arrange to control all of the material energy. So it's not possible, isn't it? You could be famous one day and infamous tomorrow. And we've seen that recently, haven't we? We've all seen it. You can look good today and then your body could age tomorrow. We've seen that again, haven't we, recently? You can be popular today and completely unpopular tomorrow. We've seen that, haven't we? The material world, Chanchala Himana Krishna, just like the mind, which is also material, the material world is fickle. What the Bhagavatam is trying to give us is one of the greatest, deepest, most profound secrets of the entire life, of the entire reality. And that is that happiness is not based upon the external arrangements. What it's trying to help us to understand is that true happiness is based upon the state of our hearts. If we are able to understand just this one thing, then what happens? Then there's a symptom of this. To the extent that we really get this point, instead of wasting all of our time trying like a crazy person, trying to control everything around us, everyone around, no, they're going to do this, they're going to dress like this, they're going to say this to me, they're going to act like this toward me. Instead of wasting our time and energy trying to control so many things around us, we'll direct the time and energy that we have towards purifying our hearts, spiritualizing our hearts, making our consciousness Krishna conscious, knowing that to the extent that my heart, my consciousness is Krishna conscious, to that extent, my happiness will be deep, profound, lasting, and completely independent of the ups and downs of the roller coaster of the material world. So, that's the message of this stage of the Bhagavatam. That's the message. And we remember the message is the mercy. This is giving us one of the most profound clues about all of life. So two points in summary. One is we should expect the inevitable. Birth, old age, disease, death. That's going to happen to every one of us and everyone around us. And two, we should understand that true happiness is not based upon trying to arrange a material situation, which no one's been able to do. But it's rather, it's using our time and energy while we still take care of the things that we need to take care of in the world, right? You may have duties, responsibilities. No one's saying you should give those up, but we should do it in a way that's connected to Krishna, and we should do our direct devotional services to transform the heart. And we should be confident that if I direct that energy, that time and energy that I have to transforming my heart, that is the greatest guarantee of experiencing deep, lasting spiritual joy and happiness, which I will also carry over with me through old age, through disease, through death, and it will bring me back to the eternal, ecstatic experience of spiritual existence. Okay, so that's my sharing. Let me pause here and just ask, are there any comments or questions from anyone on the call?
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a very powerful awakening lecture. And very, very key points that were made. So dear devotees, I would appreciate, we've got 8 minutes left. I'm sure we got lots of questions. Maybe we can have one class just on a Q&A. I'm sure we can have that. Please go ahead and, we've got many hands raised already. So Anna Mataji, can you please go ahead and...
I just want to say Haribol, Anna. It's good, great to see you.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada. Thank you so much for an amazing talk. It's so lovely to see you as well. And yeah, I just have a quick comment. I had 2 weeks ago, I had my best friend's husband died, and he was in his 40s. And I was there, and I had to go through the experience with her, basically. And it was like Krishna sort of mentally preparing me, because I don't think, and it was just like this talk just resonated with everything. So it's really, really nice. But it just showed me how, like you said, we do not know when we're going to go. We like, and I think I've been taking time for granted, and that I think it really put things into perspective. So it made me value my time more importantly, and who I choose to associate with. And I've been like turning things down and saying no to stuff. And I think it's just a really strong point that you reminded me to like keep going, because yeah, we don't know when we're going to go. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for that, because it really, really resonated with me at this moment. So yeah.
Thank you so much. No, but it's also reminding me, because I see it as a great opportunity when, and I'm really grateful for the chance to share this with all of us, because, you know, you're absolutely right, Anna. Our time is short, and that's not a bad thing, but we have to remember, because it's so precious, we can't afford to waste it with material things, you know?
No.
Now, look, I'm being very practical. You know, people have work, they have to maintain themselves, their family responsibility, but we should connect all of these things to Krishna, so that even that when you're doing those things, you're getting a spiritual benefit. And if we see that there are certain activities that are materialistic, or even certain people who want to bring us into materialistic, you know, discussions, we should remember every time we waste our time, and also every time we waste our mind by being absorbed in materialistic things, we're missing out on developing the spiritual credits that will bring us onto the platform of ecstasy. That's why I'm going to encourage all of us, don't let anyone waste your time in unnecessary materialistic activity. Your life and your success in Krishna consciousness is too precious to allow anyone. If people want to play politics, you don't even have to get into it. If you see that that's something that, if Krishna wants you to help them through that, that's different. But unless that's, don't let people waste your time, because we need to convert the temporary material into the eternal and ecstatic. We can't afford to let Maya distract us, you know, from that, you know.
I think I've been doing a lot more like because I've been reading B.T. Swami's books a lot more, but saying about learning to just, you can still be there for people, but from a distance. So love them from a distance. And that's, I found really, really helpful, because it's like, I'm still caring for you, but in a way that it doesn't bring me down and it doesn't affect my growth. So no.
That's really,
thank you so much.
No, thank you. That's a great point. Also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he talks about not taking association, what he means by that is not necessarily that you may or may not be around the person, but you don't let their materialistic values enter into your heart, and rather, ideally, you try to uplift them by giving them Krishna consciousness in some way, shape, or form. So even if I'm around, or even if we're around people who are materialistic, we can think they're part and parcel of Krishna. We can still be in a Krishna conscious meditation, first of all. Second, sometimes we may be able to give them prasadam, right? That's another thing. Sometimes we may be able to give them some aspect of Krishna conscious teaching, a book, something. But our time is so precious. And I know this for myself also. I want to be more effective in how I use all of my time in Krishna's service, knowing, as we've discussed today, it's so precious and we can't miss this opportunity. There are many people, when they leave the body at the time of death, they're going to be so upset. They're going to have so much regrets. They're going to feel, you know what? I had the chance to be Krishna conscious, and I wasted this materialistic thing. I wasted it with that materialistic thing. I wasted it in this materialistic conflict. We can't go out like that, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to make sure and it can only happen by how we live now. We can't waste time in materialistic pursuits. We have to use our time in a way that's Krishna conscious. Otherwise, we're causing harm to our own happiness.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who's next?
I think we got many, but we've got only like a couple of minutes left. So I don't know, maybe Shilpesh Prabhu, I'm going to just ask you to ask a question.
Prabhu, if you don't mind, I can take over as host, because I think this is such an important subject that we can't cut it short, if you don't mind.
No, that is fine. That is fine. So yes, Mataji, if you can take it.
You can make me host.
So yes, I will. So Prabhuji, will have to leave in a few minutes. Sorry about that, but will take over the host, and thank you very much for this wonderful, thought-provoking session.
No, thank you for my own purification. Thank you for that
as well. But I'll reach out to you on a one-to-one. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. So who's next? Is it Shilpesh?
Please go ahead. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada. So we've all experienced, personal tragedies. People close to us have died, or maybe we've had a crisis in our own lives. And at that time, we might vow that I'm going to make the most of my life, whether in material terms or in Krishna consciousness. And we may, make efforts towards doing that. But over time, it's like we kind of forget that crisis that made us make that vow. And we think, oh, I'm okay. Like we think we're all just immortal. And we just carry on with life. And it's like it's built into us to kind of forget over time.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted your opinions on that. How do we kind of keep ourselves motivated all the time?
Yeah. So it's the design of the material energy to make us forget that which is obviously true. So what we have to do and this is why hearing these classes is so important. This is why reading every day is so important. This is why hearing classes, it's not hearing, it's hearing daily. It's not reading, it's reading daily. It's not association, it's association daily. Nasta preshu abhadreshu nityam. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhakti Bhagavati Naishtaki. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Prabhupada translates that verse. He says, regular attendance. Because if you hear something again and again, it leaves an impression. If you hear it and then you don't hear it again for a while, it makes one forget. So we have to lock ourselves in, and it's also depending on how serious the person is to take advantage of this opportunity that we call human life. You see, what you've done, Shilpesh, I have to thank you. You gave me an inspiration. When I heard you ask the question, what immediately came to my mind is that someone who's really intelligent and who really understands this point, they would arrange their life in such a way that they are locked in to that realization. So, for example, if you commit to reading every day, then you're locked into an activity that will keep reminding you. You see, because otherwise, what happens is you're just expecting by your own strength to remember. What we're meant to do is lock ourselves into association, into activities, and into services which will always remind us of the truth. You see? So I would say if you really want this, and I would say this to all of you, and I'm going to try and do this myself as well, I would ask all of you, how can I arrange my life so I'm locked into remembering these truths? You see? Because you're right, the mind, if we think, oh, I'll just remember automatically, that's a recipe for disaster. We will forget. So we have to think, now that I've heard it, and at this point, when I'm conscious of the truth, how do I arrange my life so I'm locked into remembering these realities? And the result of remembering these realities is that I will not waste my time in a way that's materialistic. And every moment I'll think, yeah, if I do something spiritual now, I'm going to be able to get more spiritual credit. I won't waste my time. But I've got to set my life up that it's going to remind me all the time to engage in that spiritual activity, directly and indirectly. Yeah. So I would say, Shilpesh, think about how you and how all of us can arrange our life so that we're always engaged in that spiritual activity directly and even indirectly. So sometimes it may be indirect because we've got so many other social responsibilities, and there'll be times where we can do it directly as well, every day with our chanting, with our reading, with our hearing, with our service. But think about how you can organize your life so that you're always in the fire of Krishna consciousness. That way, you won't depend on your memory alone, but your lifestyle will always take you in that direction. Does that answer your question, Shilpesh?
Wonderful. We're all here every day on this task just for that reason.
Good. Thank you for sharing your question. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu, for a really nice question. I believe Anna has again raised her hand. Is that correct, Anna? Or is that just because you forgot to put your hand down? I guess she's not there. Namrata, go ahead and then I can ask my question. Please do.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you for this wonderful class. It was really an eye-opening one. So my question, you said in your lecture that if I give up eternal for temporary, we lose both.
Yes.
And if I have given up temporary for eternal, there is no loss.
Yes.
So yes, this is a really powerful statement. Thank you for that. There are many factors which can be, but for now I can think of one is anarthas. Sometimes due to anarthas, we tend to choose wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we avoid our wrong choices due to anarthas?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they are so subtle. Maybe we are forced to choose it because we are carrying it from long time.
No, so the thing is, when someone says they're forced to choose it, what that really means is that we've developed a habit, but the habit came from our own free choices. You see? So a habit is basically when I use my free will, when I use my free choice again and again in a certain direction. So this becomes an opportunity for us. If I've developed a bad habit through the misuse of my free will, it means I'm going to be able to do the opposite. I'm going to be able to develop a good habit through the wise use of my free will. Yeah. In other words, the very thing that got me into trouble is the very thing that can get me out of trouble. Now, the important thing to remember is if I've developed a bad habit over many years, I can't expect it to turn around overnight. I have to be patient, but I have to be patient with perseverance to become perfect. I'll say that again. I have to be patient with perseverance to become perfect. So even if we've got some bad habits, and in the material world, everyone has some bad habits, don't worry about it. But don't allow Maya to make you lose hope. Don't allow Maya to think, oh, I've got these bad habits, so I've just, and I've got these bad habits for many years, and it's just how I am. No, don't worry. Those bad habits were developed one practice at a time, and your good habits can be developed in the same way. Just focus on practicing Krishna consciousness to the best of your ability, and focus on doing it in good association. In fact, focus on doing it in the best association that you can find. That's a special trick of spiritual life. It's not just about finding good association. My spiritual master gave us the clue. He said, while respecting everyone, we should always seek out the higher association. Because there's different levels of Krishna conscious people. You should try to get the association and hear from the most Krishna conscious people that you can hear from in any opportunity. The more Krishna conscious they are, the more potency they have to help to lift us up and to speed us up in devotional service. In other words, there are different levels of devotees. Some are Kanishta Adhikaris, some are Madhyam Adhikaris, some are Uttama Adhikaris. So, first and foremost, have as much association with devotees as you can. And then, within that, have as much association with the most elevated devotees as you can. And serve sincerely and just do your best, because Krishna will help you. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? To those who serve me with devotion, I maintain what they have and I carry what they lack. So this was a real blessing that Krishna really helped me to understand. You see, often we misunderstand our teaching. We think that I have to become Krishna conscious by my own strength. That is not true. That is not true. It's just like this. If you have an illness and then the doctor gives you a medicine, and then someone says, oh, you've got to become healthy by your own strength. That's not true. It's the medicine that makes you healthy. So what's your role? Our role is, I just have to take the medicine properly. I don't make myself healthy. I take the medicine properly, and the medicine is what makes me healthy. So in the same way, I take the holy name, the instructions of the spiritual master, the association of devotees, I take those things properly, and by their potency, I become Krishna conscious. Yeah. So the trick is to make sure you take the medicine regularly, and make sure you take the medicine as expertly as you can, and you will be guaranteed by the potency of the medicine that you will become very healthy very quickly, because the medicine in Krishna consciousness is Krishna in the form of his holy name, in the form of his devotees, in the form of his deity form, in the form of his service. Does that answer your question, Namrata?
Yes, very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think it quite clarifies. Thank you.
I'm going to add one other thing, Namrata. Always pray to Guru and Krishna for their mercy. Yeah?
Yes.
And mercy by definition means that which I'm not qualified for. If you're qualified for it, it's not mercy. You see? If you always pray for mercy, always beg for mercy, you will always get more than you're qualified for, because that's the definition of mercy. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your valuable answer. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu. Thank you for a powerful, hard-hitting, eye-opening, heart-transforming, consciousness awakening, jolting into reality class. Haribol! I'm reminded of your wonderful Gurudev, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami, who didn't waste a moment. And he was a powerhouse of bhakti. And I'm so happy to hear this class from you. So my humble question to you, Prabhu, is this.
Before your question, I'm going to ask Devi and all of the devotees, please bless me so I can remember this point, so we don't waste any time, and that we engage everything in devotional service, and we live in the way that will be most pleasing to our spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to ask for your blessings, so we can do it.
Oh my God. Let's all pray to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who said, we are blessed by the best, and we are going to do everything we can to help each other pass the test. So we'll pray to Maharaj for that.
Yes, your question.
Yeah, my question is, I have no excuses for not making progress. I cannot say, oh, I have family, I have this, I have that. I'm now Vanaprastha. Krishna has arranged that I just come to the Holy Dham and absorb myself more and more in chanting, in reading, in service, in association, and so on and so on and so on. But the reality is, I'm having a very tough time with my body adjusting to India. The heat, the humidity, the crowds, the noise, the inconveniences. After living 20 years in America, it's a huge change for me. And the ground reality is I'm struggling for every little thing. So in this situation, when I'm trying to be Krishna conscious, but not really able to do things at the level I would like to, how can I, as you said, be patient and persevere towards perfection in spite of having so many handicaps? If you can kindly help. Thank you.
It's a great question. So I'll share with you the answer that lies within my heart. And there's two sides to this. I have seen in my own life, and I've seen in the life of devotees, that the struggles and challenges that we go through in devotional service and the degree to which they affect us is directly related to how much we are absorbed in service that we find to be meaningful and that completely takes our mind, energy, time, talents, and so on. So the first thing I would ask you to do, Sri Devi, is to look and see, how can I engage myself or be engaged in such a way that I'm so absorbed, that I'm so much more absorbed that I'm less affected by what's happening with my body and what's happening in the environment. That's the first part of my answer. you see, there's a real science to devotional service. Different people need different amounts of physical service, different amounts of intellectual service, different amount of pioneering service, different amount of Sangha interaction in order to feel completely absorbed. So if you look and try to understand how, why am I not as absorbed as I can be? Do I need more? Do I need to be more busy, spend more time? Do I need to be reading more? Do I need to be learning more? Do I need to be engaging in more pioneering? Figure out what you need to be maximally absorbed. And when you find that, one of the signs, you'll know that you're more absorbed when, even though there are challenges with the mind and body, you'll know that you're more absorbed because you're less affected by the challenges of the mind and body. So that's one side of the answer. The second side of the answer is to speak to people who've made the transition that you've made, i.e., especially people who've come from the West and are now in India, and ask them, how did you adjust? How did you make the transition? And get ideas from them about what they did, and then start to experiment with adjusting certain things to see what works best for you in particular. Yeah. There's one more thing I wanted to share, and that is always remember the benefit of what you're doing and where you are. Because if you're going through some austerity, but you are convinced of the benefit of the austerity, it makes it easy to keep going. But if you're going through some austerity and you're not convinced that it's actually a meaningful austerity, you're not convinced that it's worth, you're not convinced that what you're getting is worth the trouble, then it becomes very difficult to keep going. I had many years where I had chronic fatigue, but I would be able to push myself every day to go to work, etc. Because, and what helped me, this is a mundane example, what helped me was, one, my work was according to my nature. So it was easy to just keep doing it because it was according to my nature. And B, because I was working and that work allowed me to maintain my ashram, I was convinced, because I'm doing it in service to others, and I'm doing it, which allows me to create a foundation so I could keep doing my direct devotional service. I kept seeing, even though it's hard work, because I have to use my willpower to just keep my body and mind going because I was so tired all the time. I thought, but this is allowing me to maintain my ashram, to maintain my wife. It's allowing me to maintain some financial basis so I can go to the temple, do service, because I remember the goal and how this helps me to achieve the goal. It allowed me to keep going. And at the same time, while I was doing that, I was also seeing different health professionals to see what can I do to overcome this chronic fatigue. So that formula of how can I be most absorbed? Point number one. Point number two, what can I do practically to adjust the mind and body so it's not so disturbed? Point number two. And point number three, always remembering the goal and remembering that I'm gaining, that if I'm doing this properly, what do I gain by going through this austerity or going through this challenge while trying to adjust it? If I remember these three things, it gives me the determination and the patience while I always try to see how I can improve on things in my spiritual journey. That would be my advice to you. How does that sound? Does that make sense, Sri Devi?
The first point sounds wonderful because I am getting very much absorbed in this eco-village project that is so dear to Guru Maharaj. So it is moving more towards less physical and more intellectual, more pioneering, more research-oriented. And so maybe that's why, Krishna is saying, okay, use your time in a different way. So that really gels with me immediately. What can I do to improve myself, which means take proper Ayurvedic opinions and pay more attention to what is going on so that I can address it. And the third one, which you said, which is keep the goal in mind. I think that's where the work needs to be done because I tend to lose it. I tend to lose the big picture. And that's really something you have given me food for thought. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Supriya, I think you have a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Prabhuji, this is a question regarding the prasadam that we eat. I usually give a seva in temple, in kitchen. And I ask this question, am I audible?
Yes.
I ask this question that we prepare so much of a food for a feast. Okay. And who prepares this food? Is he a Brahman initiated? So I got a reply that no, people are not Brahmin initiated. I thought at least the people who are putting food into the fire, like last stage of the food preparation, I heard that they must be Brahmin initiated. Because Krishna doesn't accept the food which is not prepared by someone who is not Brahmin initiated, or I mean, in the past he used to accept from Yashoda Maya and Radharani. So now the question is, when we give this entire food that we prepare for so many people, when it is not prepared by those people who are not Brahmin initiated, how that food is converted into prasad? Because the Krishna doesn't accept that food, right? It's not done by someone who is Brahmin initiated.
So no, it's not quite like that. There are different standards that Krishna accepts, and the ultimate standard is the devotion. So in Prabhupada's time, you'll find this in Lilamrita. Prabhupada, he had all the devotees and they could all offer food, and he would invite everyone, even if they're cooking food which is obviously vegetarian with no onions and garlic in their own home, they could still offer it to the Lord. And Krishna himself says he accepts it if it's offered with devotion. So the most important factor is actually the devotion and the sincerity. So different temples will have different standards. If a temple community has feasts and there are a good number of Brahmins there and they're available, that's a great standard to have. But the point is actually the devotion is the most important point. Just like anyone, you know, if you preach to a person and they become a devotee and they're not even initiated yet, we don't tell them, well, you're not initiated, you can't make any you can't offer any food to Krishna in your home because you're not even first initiated. We don't say that. In Prabhupada's books, he says anyone. The moment the moment you're interested in Krishna, take vegetarian food stuff. You're going to eat anyway. Don't eat any meat, fish, or eggs. Don't eat any onions and garlic. Take your vegetarian food stuff and offer it to the Lord. So anyone can offer. And actually, the quality is in the devotion. The most important quality is the devotion, and that's what Krishna accepts. So if you have a temple community and there are Brahmin initiated devotees there and they can do that, that's wonderful. But if you don't have that, or if they're not available, then whoever is available, as long as they follow properly and they offer in the standard way to the Lord, he will accept.
Okay.
Okay.
One more question, Prabhuji. See, I'm not initiated yet, but I came to Krishna consciousness couple of months back, like I can say 1 year back. Before that, I used to eat outside. And thing is that when we eat food which is prepared outside, they say, oh, it was not done with the same consciousness as a devotion. I mean, we don't do it with the same consciousness. But the thing is that if we bring that food and then we sanctify it, like purify it with our sanctified water, and then offer it to Lord, is it accepted or is it still not accepted?
It's a very good question. So first of all, the best standard is that the food is made by the devotees and then offered to the Lord. That's the best standard. If for some reason, this is really important, because sometimes devotees are working or they're in a certain environment where they can't always just have food which is cooked by devotees. If that is the case, then one must do the best that they can, right? That means at least they should still have vegetarian food stuff. They shouldn't eat anything with meat, fish, or eggs. They should have vegetarian food stuff, and they should still offer that food to the Lord, right? So they're doing the best that they can. If they're genuinely in a situation where they can't have the food which is only cooked, food which is cooked by Krishna, and then what that will mean is it will be progressive, because still the remembrance of Krishna is there, the offering is there, so someone will still get purified. What Krishna sees is that the person is genuinely doing the best that they can in the situation that they're in. So that's
Okay.
the point. So that's why the real thing is that the one has done their best. If there's a genuine situation where for whatever reason they were honestly unable to cook the food and offer it to Krishna, and therefore in this situation it's not being cooked by devotees, but it's vegetarian, and if they do the best that they can, Krishna will see, okay, this is progressive. But if they're just doing it out of laziness or out of sense gratification, then there's a different thing. So that's the point. You have to do the best that you honestly can. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, so forgive me. I'm gonna have to go, just because I also have another appointment. But I want to say thank you all for your time and your association, and thank you for allowing us to serve you. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu.
Hare
and we look
Krishna.
forward to the next class.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Candramauli Maharaj ki jai. Hare Krishna.
His Grace Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu ki jai. Sadhu Sangha ki jai. Haribol. Thank you very much. You've enlivened all of us so much today with this wonderful, wonderful class. And I really mean it when I say I look forward to the next one.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Boys, I go for it, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Accept all the blessings of God.
Thank you, dear devotees. Hare Krishna. I will now end the call.